Shalom, covenant keeper, children of Israel. You're listening to Awaken to Torah Ministries, where spirit and truth converge. We are a listener-supported ministry and ask that you prayerfully consider supporting this work. This ministry is focused on revealing the message of Torah taught by our Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. Your donation will be used to further the ministry devoted to exposing the lies that we have inherited from our forefathers, as Jeremiah 16:19 clearly declares. You can contact us at 777-690 South 4680 Road, Stillwell, Oklahoma 74960, or join our mailing list at awakentotorah@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting when we once again are sheltered by a cloud by day and a fire by night on our way to Jerusalem. Shalom Aleichem, and see you there.
All right, Shalom Aleichem, covenant keepers and children of Israel. I'm your host, James Gillespie of Awaken to Torah Ministries. Thanks for joining us today for another Awaken to Torah teaching. Today, we're going to talk about a little sensitive subject in the Messianic movement. I lovingly refer to when I teach this message, its side note is how to not influence people and make friends. Because it's a sensitive subject of the Messianic movement, and it's about the calendar. Okay, and this year is one of those years, and a few years ago we had one of those years where the calendars didn't line up, and they were almost a month apart, and there was such confusion. But I didn't want to jump into the fray then, and I probably should have and did not. So this year I wanted to just jump in the middle of it, lay it all out on the table for everyone to see, because I don't believe anything in the secret can do anybody any good. I believe sunlight is a disinfectant, and it will bring positive light to those things that need to be highlighted, and it will bring negative light to those things that need to be cast aside. So with that said, I know that what I'm going to teach on here today is not going to make me too many friends. Most people will use this to support what it is that they already believe, and others will use it to kind of push them away from the ministry or whatever. I don't want to put anything off on anybody, but this year is going to be one of those years that the biblical calendar is going to happen almost an entire month before the Jewish Hillel 2 calendar. Okay, we at Awaken to Torah take the stance that we will side with the Bible over men any day. And if we can't find it in the Bible, then we don't want to take that stance. Scripture alone is what we built this ministry on, and that's what we're going to continue to walk this ministry out day to day with, is Scripture alone. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump into the teaching. I'm going to try not to keep you very long today. I have a bunch of slides, but hopefully we can get through them fairly fast. So let's just jump over to that camera. And take a look at what we're talking about today. Awaken to Torah Ministries, Biblical Calendar Confusion, presented by Rabbi James Gillespie. Those who know me know I don't really go by Rabbi, even though that's a title that I've earned. Just call me James. We're good. But it is a title that I earned at Yeshiva, so I earned the preface is all I'm saying there. Okay, I know somebody's going to jump on that and give me a hard time. That's all right, though. It's just part of it. So let's move forward here. I'm going to talk about 3 points today that we should be able to look at. Sorry, I keep saying for some reason. I don't know why I'm doing that today. I will try to not do that so much because it annoys me when I'm listening back to it. Number one, the biblically corrected sighted new moon Abib calendar. Number 2, feast day confusion. And number 3, can we even keep the feast outside the land of Israel? We're going to explore all 3 of these points today. So let's just continue to move. How to determine the month starting with the new year. Okay, so as I stated previously, we at Awaken to Torah take the stance that we are on a sighted new moon, agriculturally corrected calendar. Okay, now I know right away people are going to say, well, the Bible doesn't say barley. Blah, 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 blah. They're just going to go crazy because that's what they do. They would rather fight about something than take a genuine look at what Scripture actually says. So this is why we at Awaken to Torah have taken the stance that we move along a biblically corrected, sighted new moon, agriculturally corrected calendar. Okay, I know that's a long term, but it basically tells you what calendar that we're on when I state it like that, because there are many people who are on some type of this calendar that aren't what we're on. Okay, so let's just dive into it and see exactly what it is that Scripture says concerning Yahweh's calendar and Yahweh's reckoning of time. Okay, so we find our first example in Exodus 12, 1 and 2. It says, And Yod-He Vav-He spake unto Moshe and unto Aaron in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. So this Rosh Hashanah, the first month of the year. Okay, the Rosh Hashanah, the first month of the year to you. So what month was Yahweh referring to when he told this to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt? The month that he was referring to is one of the last plagues that had happened there. Okay, it was when the hail had come down. That same month that the hail had come down and it had beaten the barley and the flax. That is the month that he's referring to. So let's jump back to Exodus chapter 9, verses 31 through 32. It says, And the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear. And that word there is the word Abib. So it is in the month of the Abib. Okay, so, and barley is the first crop to grow in Israel. So that's the reason we talk about barley all the time. We're not, if we were in Oklahoma, we would be talking about dogwood trees, because they're the first one that puts on a gibel, a bolden. So this word bolden means flowering. Okay, so if we were marking the starting of our day by Oklahoma time, I would go out and I would look for dogwood trees, because that's the first thing that puts on a bloom here in Oklahoma. In Israel, the first thing that we see produced is a crop, and that crop is barley. Okay, so that is why we look for both the barley and the flax, or the barley and the flowers of the land, to become bolden, or in the ear, Abib. Okay, so let's read that verse with that understanding. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was in the ear, Abib, and the flax was bolden, Gibol. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. So the Father is specifically pointing at a very specific time of the year, okay? Because he could have used the month when the wheat grew. He didn't. Or the rye grew. He didn't. Because they are a later crop. He used that first thing when the earth starts becoming alive again. When we have gone through the winter months and everything has lost its life, and now everything is being resurrected. Okay, that is when the Father marks his calendar, the beginning of months. That's why Exodus 12, 1 through 2, And Yahweh spoke unto Moses in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be the month, the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. And how do we know that that's the first month of the year? Okay, because then we jump down to Deuteronomy 16:1. It says, Observe the month Chodesh of Abib. That word Abib means green and in the ear. Okay, and keep the Pesach Passover unto Yod He Vav He thy Elohim for the month, the Chodesh of Abib, Yod He Vav He thy Elohim brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt by night. So he is clearly saying it was in the month of the Abib. This is the month of the Abib. This is when the barley and the flax become alive, the barley and the flax become alive and green and in the ear. Okay, the Gibol Abib. Okay, so we need to understand that. So at no other point in the year, I know that we get to the 7th month, and on the Jewish calendar, we start calling the 7th month the Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. That's not when Yahweh said the head of the year was. Yahweh said the head of the year is the month of the Abib. Okay, so the month that something first becomes green and in the ear. Okay, and we see this clearly here in Deuteronomy 16:1. But there's another revelation revealed in this one verse, and if you notice, I highlighted this word Chodesh 2 times here, and there's a reason. Because this is called a Hebraism. Whenever we see 2 words that are exactly the same used in the same sentence that have multiple meanings, one has to mean one thing and the other has to mean another thing. So if I were to correctly translate this scripture into modern English, it would read a little bit differently. It would read like this. Shamar. Okay, this word observe is the Hebrew word shamar. Okay. So, and shamar means to look narrowly, so to search for something. Okay. Now there are those that say the new moon is when there's no moon in the sky, when it's completely obscured. Well, you can't look for something that's not there. Okay. You can't visually sight something that is not in the sky. So that is why we look for that first sliver of the new moon. Okay. Observe, shamar, the month. That's properly translated the first time, the Chodesh of Abib. So the month of Abib. And keep Pesach unto Yod He Vav He thy Elohim. For in the month of Chodesh, there's that word month again, but it shouldn't mean month there. Okay? So observe the moon. So let me back up. I said that was correct. It's incorrect. This should be observe Shamar, the moon of Abib. Okay, so that's what we're observing. There has to be something to observe there. So we can't observe a month. I mean, there's numerous days in a month. There's numerous events in the month. There's numerous Sabbaths in a month. So on and so forth. So he is saying Shamar, look narrowly for something, and that something has to be the moon. So observe the moon of Abib, and keep Pesach unto Yod He Vav He thy Elohim. For the moon, it can't be moon here, right? So, for in the moon, no, we came out on the 14th day. So it can't be the observation of that first sliver there. So we have to translate that as month. Okay, the Chodesh. Okay, for in the month of the Abib, Yod He Vav He thy Elohim brought thee out from the land of Egypt by night. We know that was at the evening or on the 15th day. All right, so I have a whole teaching on that alone, on that Exodus. I believe that we actually left the evening of the 15th, which would have begun the 16th day into the 17th day, because we didn't leave on a Sabbath, because the first day of unleavened bread is the Sabbath. So anyways, there's a whole different teaching on that, and that's not what we're going for today. We just want to keep on rolling here. So that word Abib and month, we'll take a look at them, the Strong's references for them. From an unused root meaning to be tender, green, that is a young ear of grain. So a young ear of grain, hence the name of the month Abib or Nisan. Okay, so the first month of the year is named Nisan. We call it Abib because it's when everything becomes green and in the ear. Okay, ears of corn. Okay, So then we have this word chodesh. Okay, it means the new moon, by implication a month. Okay, so a new moon or a month, it can mean either one. So when we see that word appearing twice in the same sentence, it means both. It means one means month and one means moon. So you have to transpose them and see what makes more sense, like we did there. It says observe, so you have to observe something. So the moon is what you would observe, because it was in the month of the Aviv that Yahweh brought thee out of the land of Egypt by night. Okay, so now we have both of those definitions sorted out. So right now in Jerusalem, if you look at these pictures, right now in Jerusalem, this is the state of barley. I would definitely say this barley is ready to be harvested right here. Both of these. This barley right here is starting to turn. You can see the brown tops on it. And within probably a week or so, it will be turning brown. It's already bowing over. So in a week or so, it will be turning, bowing down to the ground, and it will be ready to be harvested. Okay. So in biblical times, the high priest would walk outside of the temple. He would find a certain amount of this. He would bind it, a sheave of it together. He wouldn't cut it. He would observe that sheave until it was ready to be harvested. And on first fruits, which falls in that week of unleavened bread, he would then take a sickle and put to the two sheaves that he had bound, and he would raise them before the Yahweh as the first fruits of the land. Now, every farmer would do the same. They would take up their first fruits as well. I mean, they wouldn't wave them before the Father. They would take that grain to the temple and give it as their first fruit offerings. Okay? But I just wanted to show you these pictures. I got this. I want to attribute the pictures to a Beeb of God, which you can go there and look at it. Deborah's date tree is also another good one. They're going out and sighting it. There's several people who are messianic and they're living in the land of Israel now who are looking for the signs because they want to be on a biblical calendar. So you can find as much as this kind of stuff as you want, but we still have people this year that are saying, no, we're not going to call the next sighted moon the head of the year, because they have dug their heels in on other calendars. We're going to try to explore that a little bit as we move on here, but this is the state of the barley in the land of Israel in several different fields and several different places over the land of Israel right now. So I would definitely say that we are a bead according to the definitions that we had just read. We haven't cited that next new moon yet, but we'll get there in just a second. Exodus 12, 1 through 6. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Okay, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Okay, so that head of the year. Okay, it shall be the first chodesh of the year unto you. Speak ye unto the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this chodesh month, they shall take unto them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house and a household. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make for your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out of the sheep or out of the goats. Ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at all of that. Okay, so here is our next new moon. On March 11th, okay, today is March 8th for anybody who wants to know. That's the day I'm doing this teaching, March 8th. So basically 3 days from now, we will go out and we will sight the new moon here at Bet Hillel for Awaken to Torah Ministries. If I didn't want to bring in a bunch of confusion, but on March 10th, there is a slight possibility of it being viewed inside the United States. Okay, very slight. I don't believe it will be able to be viewed inside the United States, but as you know, Israel is 11 hours ahead of us here in Oklahoma, and it would almost be impossible for them to view it on the 10th. So that is why we are going on the 11th and looking for I'll go personally on the 10th as well, just for the slight chance. But the congregation will assemble on the 11th, and we will all sight it together because I believe that that's when it's going to be visible. As you can see, the age is 1.1 days old. It's going to be 2% because the first time light strikes the moon, which I don't believe is going to be visible, will be on the 10th. Okay, that's why it's 1.1 days old. So it should be 2%, and it should be visible in Israel. So it won't quite be 1.1 days in Israel. It'll be 0.8 days that the moon will have light upon it. So they should be able to. It should be visible in Israel. All right. This is just a bunch of technical stuff. Read it if you want to. Go get your moon calculators and figure out for yourself. Okay, don't just take somebody's word for it ever. But go figure this out for yourself, and then go out and physically sight the new moon. That's what we're commanded to do. That's what Deuteronomy 16:1 says. Shamar, look narrowly for the moon. So we're supposed to go out and look for this moon. That's part of keeping the feast, and we can't add to and we can't take away from anything that the Father told us to do. So if He commanded us to observe the moon, then we need to observe the moon. I know a lot of people rely on computers nowadays, and I'm using a computer program here to estimate, but I will also physically go sight the new moon as well. So a count begins. So we're just going to start counting from here. I'm going to keep this page up for a minute. You can screenshot it if you want to. This screenshot talks about if it's sighted on the 11th. Now, of course, if for some reason we do sight it on the 10th, all of these dates will back up one day. Okay, so if it's sighted on the 11th at sunset, this will be your feast day calendar this year. If you're on the sighted new moon, that crescent moon, agriculturally corrected calendar. If you're on that calendar, then this will be your calendar. We have one more slide, so screenshot this right now because I'm fixing to move to the next one. Oh, let me talk about this for a minute. If you see it highlighted in red, that's a weekly Sabbath. Yellow is a feast day Sabbath, and green, I think, is Pesach. I think that's the way I did it on this one. Okay, so day 8, day 9, day 10. That day 10's right here. That's where we should go get our lamb and bring it into our house. That begins that feast day cycle. Go get my book Beyond Contestation. It talks about that whole crucifixion week, the birth and the death of Messiah. So when he was born and exactly what happened during the week that he died. That book of Beyond Contestation. It talks about this feast day cycle starting on day 10 right here when we would bring in the lamb for inspection, and how this is the day that they would have got Yeshua in the Garden of Eden and brought him in for inspection by the high priest, which at that time was Caiaphas. Okay, most people think it happened here. It didn't. It happened here. Okay. I'm not teaching on that today. Let's just continue to move forward. March 21st, 22nd, the 11th, and the 12th. That would be the days of inspection. The suns from March 23rd to the 24th at sunset. That's a Sabbath. Okay. So then we have one day more. Okay, so we have 10, 11, 12, 13. Now we hit 14. So 14 is the day that we would take our lamb out this morning. As soon as we hit that 14th day, actually at sunset on the 13th, which would begin the 14th day. Okay, so we're beginning the 14th day, we would wait until morning. As soon as we got up that morning, we would sacrifice the lamb. We would prepare it. We would get it ready to go on the spit to be roasted on an open fire. We're not sodden, with all its pertinences inside of it. All of the commandments. So we want to keep every bit of that commandment. We can't pick and choose what we want to keep. We have to do it all if we're going to do any of it. Okay. I just want to make that point. Sunset the 25th till sunset the 26th. So now we're ending Pesach. This is when we would start eating the Pesach, and this would begin the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's why we have unleavened bread with that meal. Okay, so this is going to begin that Feast of 7 days of unleavened bread, and we'll continue that. Oh, let me go back. So we'll continue that for 7 days, all the way down to right here. But I want to make note here. The green, I guess, is unleavened bread and a weekly Sabbath. Okay, so now we are not the weekly Sabbath. It is unleavened bread. I don't know why I put the weekly Sabbath there, because the weekly Sabbath is here in the red. Okay. Oh no, I was right. I was right. So this is the weekly Sabbath, and this is the first day. I got these colors transposed. Okay, so this is the 5th day of unleavened bread and the weekly Sabbath. Then March 30th, because of the weekly Sabbath, that is when we do first fruits. That's when the priest would have stepped in the field with a sickle and cut the 2 barley grains, or the 2 sheaves of barley that he had bound. Maybe one of barley, one of flax. But he would have cut those 2 sheaves, and he would have waved them before the Father, and that would have marked first fruits. So the very next day would have been the 7th day, which is also a feast day Sabbath, but it is also the first day of the counting of the Omer. Okay, so that'll start your 50-day count. I didn't want to go through the whole 50-day count. We'll do that in another teaching. But I wanted you just to have this written down so you would know what days are high days, what days are feast days, when everything begins and when everything ends. Okay, so let's move on. Feast day confusion. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because Hillel 2 says Pesach is on April 22nd. That's almost a month later. So we're celebrating Pesach on the evening of the 25th. They won't be celebrating Pesach until April 22nd in the evening. Okay. The full moon calendar observers, they'll observe it on the 8th of April if they're on a sighted new moon, or because they believe that the new moon is the full moon and not the sighted sliver. Okay, so if they're going off of this first barley harvest, then they'll be on the 8th. If they're going off of the next one, which will be next month after the next moon, then they're going to be even a month later than the April day. That's why it's so confusing. And even a more confusing one is the Enochian calendar observers. Will be somewhere around the 22nd of April as well. They'll pick a date depending on if they added the 2 days or the 1 day. Different sects of this calendar keeper. They all call themselves Enochian calendar keepers, but even this different sects of them don't agree with the same sects of the calendar. And this whole calendar was originated off of a false book of Enoch in the first place. Now that book of Enoch has been exposed, they'll say, well, I don't need the book of Enoch to prove the Enochian calendar, and it's a 13-month calendar with 30 days, and they'll go, and it's a really educated guess, but it isn't what Yahweh said. So we're to observe the Chodesh, okay? We're to observe Shamar the Chodesh. And to get away with that, some of them will even say, well, that word wasn't necessarily Chodesh in the beginning. I don't want to go into an argument with these other calendars. I'm just telling you that there are some covered up things when you look at these calendars, and each one of these calendars, if you talk to a Hillel calendar person, they will absolutely convince you that Hillel 2 is what we should be doing because that's what the sages say, and so on and so forth. The full moon, they have reasons that they cite the full moon and not the crescent moon. They'll convince you that they're right. The Enochian calendars, they have reasons that they believe what they believe, and they'll convince you that they're right. Now we have the equinox observers. Okay, some state that the equinox has to occur prior to the new moon being sighted for that to be declared the first month. So that'll be somewhere around the 22nd as well, because the equinox this year doesn't happen until the 20th or the 21st, I believe. And because the moon will be sighted on the 11th, the equinox had not occurred prior to the sighting of the moon, so they will call it after the next moon. I don't believe that we need to sight an equinox, but this month I think that having an equinox prior to Pesach completes a cycle. As long as it happens even the day of, I would call it, yes, the cycle is completed. Equinox to equinox, that's a full year. We can celebrate Pesach tonight because the equinox was last night. I mean, that's the way we see it here at Awaken to Torah. I think that Scripture bears that out as well, because it is a year. It's the completing of a cycle. Shana, that Shana cycle, that yearly cycle, has been completed, and as long as it is completed before Pesach, you can have Pesach in our stance. Now here's where we get a little touchy, and where a lot of people are going to get their feelings hurt. Well, that probably hurt some people's feelings that are on these other calendars in that last slide, but this is where people are really going to get their feelings hurt, because Messianics have made the feast days an idol, and we are to have no idols before Yahweh. So your understanding of the feast, if you put your understanding of the feast days before what Yahweh actually said, then you are making an idol out of your feast day observance. Okay, so let's look at this. Can or should we keep the feast days outside the land of Israel? So I put the Passover here. Leviticus 23, 4 through 8. These are the feast of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month, the month of Aviv, at even is the Yahweh's, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's Pesach, Passover. And the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. That's a Sabbath. The first day is the Sabbath. That's why we marked it on the calendar. But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work. So this first day and the 7th day are both feast day Sabbaths. That's why we mark them on the calendar. Okay? So Pesach we did outside the land. Okay? I want everybody to understand that. We did Pesach outside the land. We did not do first fruits outside the land. We did do Pesach and unleavened bread. Unleavened bread because we didn't have time for our bread to be leavened. So we did those outside the land. We see them done outside the land even after our exodus out of Egypt. We see clearly in the second year we did it. Some people make the case that we did it every year for that 40 years, and other people make the case that we did it 2, possibly 3 times after coming out of the land. The Scripture just doesn't elaborate on that for a certainty. We can see 2, possibly 3 times after we came out of the land. until we went, before we went in, after we came out of Egypt, and before we went into Jerusalem or into Israel. Okay, that's what we're talking about, that 40-year period of time there. So we see that there's feast day Sabbath there and a feast day Sabbath here, but you don't see the feast of first fruits mentioned in this right here. But let's jump down to after we start observing first fruits. So verse 9 through 14. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land. Okay? All the Moed feast appointed times that followed are prefaced with when ye come into the land. We can't add to, we can't take away. If you're not in the land, then you can't keep these feasts in the way that the Father is instructing Moses and Aaron to do so. Okay, so anything that we do outside the land of Israel is nothing more than rehearsals. If you try to say that you're keeping the feast, which most Messianics, well, I'll keep the feast, I keep the Sabbath. No, you don't. You might keep the Sabbath, you may keep Pesach, but you cannot keep the feast because you are not fulfilling the ordinances surrounding those feasts. And you can't fulfill the ordinances surrounding those feasts because you're not in the land. There is no Levitical priesthood. The sacrifices aren't being made. All of those things have to be intact because you can't add to and you cannot diminish aught from anything that Yahweh has commanded you. Uh-oh. I just created big problems for a lot of people. So let's go back and read that again. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, ye shall reap the harvest thereof, and ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. And ye shall wave the sheaf offering before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And ye shall offer that day, when ye wave the sheaf, a lamb without blemish of the first year, for a burnt offering unto Yahweh. So we need to understand. Again, another lamb is required on first fruits. We can't do the sacrifices here, okay? And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made with fire unto Yahweh for a sweet savor, and the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the 4th part of a hin. And ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the self same day that you have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Okay? All your dwellings when ye be come into the land. Not wherever you are in the world, but when ye be come into the land, because you can only offer sacrifices in the place where Yahweh placed his name. Okay? I don't know how we can make that any more simple to you. So you cannot keep any feast besides Pesach outside the land. Can't do it because you are not fulfilling the ordinances that surround that feast. There is no Levitical priesthood to offer a second lamb. There is no Levitical priesthood to wave that before the Father. The temple has not been restored. None of those things are intact. So any sacrifice that you would try to make before the Father at this point to keep these feasts would be an abomination. It would. You would be just like the sons of Eli. You would be offering strange fire before the Father. And he makes that really clear. I have teachings on sacrifices and why we don't do them. That's not what I'm teaching today. I'm just trying to explain to you that everybody's standing in judgment over everybody else because they're getting the feast days wrong. They can't even keep them. They can't keep them themselves. So you're judging someone else for sinning differently than you. How can you say you love God whom you can't even love your brother whom you can see? But you're going to stand in judgment over them, damning many of them to eternal fires of hell because you don't even understand the concept of heaven and hell. You're damning them to the eternal fires of hell because they're not keeping the feast days on the same day you are when you're not keeping them either. I know that's rough talk. I know that's rough teaching, but you need to hear it. You need to understand it. You need to understand it really good. Because you standing in judgment over your brother, you are becoming a false witness. And if you are accusing him of a sin unto death, you being a false witness now are guilty of the same. And you must be put to death as well. So you are committing a sin unto death by standing in judgment over your brother who is not keeping the feast days the way you think they should when you're not keeping the feast days yourself. We got to get serious about this, guys. We can't serve God by our own standards. We have to serve Him by His. He is the one that established these rules. He's the one that established these statutes and these judgments forever throughout our generations. 3 times a year, thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. We know what those 3 times are. Passover. Unleavened bread is what he refers to it as. Unleavened bread. You have to be there for that 15th day. You could have done Passover the day before you got there, but that 15th day you need to be in Jerusalem. The Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Ingathering, you have to be in Jerusalem. And the final Feast of Sukkot, you have to be in Jerusalem. Not my word, it's His word. So if you're not in Jerusalem keeping those 3 feasts, you're not keeping the feast. Quit lying to people and say, oh, we're keeping the feast. We're keeping the feast at this Sukkot site, and this Sukkot site, and this Sukkot site in Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and Missouri, and California, and Texas. You're not. You're getting together with a bunch of like-minded believers, rehearsing, practicing. You're not keeping the feast. You're not even beginning to keep the feast because not one statute that precedes the feast has been met. And the number 1 statute of you being in the land to celebrate the feast has not been met. So you're not keeping the feast. Quit lying. And quit standing in judgment over your brother when you're doing the same thing he's doing. He's just doing it on a different day than you. He's wrongly keeping the feast or convincing himself he's keeping the feast on a day that you wrongly are judging him on. Now, however you look at it, I mean, we can put it 50 different ways. When it boils down to is you're becoming a false judge of your brother. How can you say you love Yahweh whom you have not seen? When you can't love your brother whom you have seen. Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yahweh thy Elohim in the place which he shall choose. We know that he chose Jerusalem. In the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh empty. So all your males, none of them can be empty-handed when they show up before the Father. 2 Kings 21:4. And he built altars in the house of Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, of which Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said, in Jerusalem will I put my name. Where are we supposed to appear? In the place that he chose, where he put his name. Ezra 6:12. And the Elohim that hath caused his name to dwell there. Where does his name dwell? It says Jerusalem. Who has caused his name to dwell there. Destroy all kings and people that shall put their hand to alter and destroy this house of God, which is at Jerusalem. So he says he's going to destroy all the kings of the earth if they put their hands to destroy the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree. Let it be done with speed. Okay. 2 Chronicles 6:6. But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Again, go get the book. If you don't have the money to buy it off Amazon, contact this ministry. I'll give you a copy for free. We're not trying to make money from selling books, and we're not ministers out here trying to hawk our latest wares. That's not what we're doing here. We're trying to get right information into the hands of people who are seeking true information in a world full of lies. We only want to say what Yahweh says. We only want to believe what Yahweh tells us to believe as his people. We only want to do what Yahweh told us to do and do it in the way that he told us to do it. That's the whole goal of Awaken to Torah Ministries, is that we follow Scripture and Scripture alone. Do not add to or diminish aught. Deuteronomy 4:2. You shall not, that's a commandment. You shall not add unto the word which I command you. Okay, so that means we can't make up our own rules. But here he goes a little bit more serious. Neither shall you diminish aught from it. So if he commanded you to offer a sacrifice to keep the feast and you refuse to, you are walking in disobedience. You are sinning. You are transgressing the Torah because you are diminishing something that he commanded you to do. If you're not making that journey 3 times a year to Jerusalem and offering sacrifices before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, which is impossible right now because there is no Levitical priesthood, there is no temple for you to do those things, then you are deceiving yourself by saying and trying to convince people that you are keeping the feast of Yahweh. No, you are practicing the feast of Yahweh. You are trying to learn while we are in the diaspora how to keep the feast, that when we do appear before Yahweh, we all don't die because we're doing it wrong. We have to start getting these elements right. Even if we're doing mock sacrifices, even if we're doing those types of things, if we're saying, okay, this person is going to be acting in the place of a Levitical priest, I'm not talking about actually killing an animal, sacrificing blood. That's not what I'm talking about. Take a piece of wood, act like you're sacrificing it. I don't care how it is, but these are rehearsals. If that's truly what we're doing, there was a place that most people don't realize. There's a place outside of Jerusalem called Qumran. And this is where all the priests were trained, and they would do mock sacrifices. They would do these things daily to try to learn the proper way to do it. So when they did come into the tabernacle and they did start offering sacrifices, Yahweh wouldn't kill them for doing it the wrong way. We are in the diaspora, and we should be trying to do these things appropriately the way Yahweh told us to do them if we're really trying to do rehearsals. Otherwise, let's just call it what it is. We're just having an old-time gospel church camp meeting and getting together with our friends and like-minded believers, because that's what you're doing. What we are saying is keeping the feast right now it doesn't even rise to the level of a rehearsal, because we're not even talking about what we're supposed to be doing during those feasts. We show up and throw a party, and some of these people, Messianics, getting drunk and smoking marijuana and all this crazy stuff. It's absolutely blows my mind when you go to some of these feast sites and see what's going on. They're teenagers cussing and talking about sex and all, just craziness. going on at these feasts, and they say, oh yeah, we're keeping the feast, we're doing this to Yahweh. If you were doing that unto Yahweh, he would smoke you where you stand. We had to leave a feast site this year. One of the main reasons was we felt like it was dangerous for our children. We felt like our children were being harmed more than they were being helped. We want our children to be around like-minded believers, but the negative influences that were being allowed, we could no longer say that we supported that. And it wasn't the leadership's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just the people who had began to gravitate towards that feast site. I personally know the leadership. They don't live like that. They don't believe like that. They're great human beings. But the feast site itself had become out of control with the young adults and teenagers. So we had to make the choice to take a break from that. So if those people who follow this ministry, if you're coming to the old feast site that we'd been in for 3 or 4 years, we're not going to be there this year. We're trying to figure out a new location even right now. I would rather be with 4 or 5 families who are trying to do what Yahweh says to do and do it properly and in the right way, and do it as though we are doing it unto Yahweh. I would rather do it with just a few than to do it with 1,000. And everybody arguing and fighting about this and that, and the debauchery and marijuana and drunkenness and the craziness. I just rather would. And I didn't mention anybody's name. I didn't mention the feast site because I don't want to damage anyone. I want to do what Yahweh told us to do to the best of my ability. And because I have taken that stance over the years, it has severed friendships, it has severed relationships, it has caused people to run my name in the dirt. But I promise you, if you ever meet me personally, you're going to see that the words that I speak to you today are not just words coming out of my mouth. This is what I live. This is who I am. This is how I live every day. Those who know me personally, they'll tell you that that's the truth. Because I live a life in fear of Elohim. Because my Bible says that the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. That's my whole duty. And if I could just do that, if I can just help my family to learn how to do that, I think that in some way I will receive mercy from Elohim in all of my ignorance. I just want to continue to walk out what it is he told us to believe. I want to help others do the same. And if you're listening to Awaken the Torah, that's the goal of this ministry. That's the goal of Fifth Sabbath. That's the goal of the tents of Israel. We just want to help people find their way, the real way to find Elohim and find him in his own terms, not on our own terms. Thanks for listening to Awaken the Torah today. We appreciate you. We love you. Let me get myself back on the camera here, if I can get my mouse over there. But we love you. We want you to know that anything that we can do at Awaken the Torah to help you, any teachings that we can give you for free, I try to put everything out for free. I have probably 10,000 hours of teaching on video. Anything you need, you can go and listen to it. Yeah, because it's all going to be scripture based. It's not going to be James's opinion. That's the problem when you start listening to all of the different voices in this movement. I mean, there are good voices. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it everybody except for me. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want to put myself as that cult leader guy. That's not even what we want to even broach. So don't get it twisted. I am not saying that there are no good teachers in this faith. I'm saying that there are a lot of people who have crept into this faith in the last 10 to 12 years who are trying to build their own kingdom. So they are taking things that have been settled for many years, twisting them to their own understanding and building their own doctrines. They are adding to and diminishing from what Elohim has commanded. So those are the people that I am referring to when I say we are not like them. And we are not like them, and we don't want to be like them, and we don't want to be their friends. Okay, I know that sounds ugly, but it is. It just is what it is. I don't want to be their friends. I don't want to be heralded by them. They can continue to say evil things about me. That's all right. I don't care, because at the end of this life, I want to stand before a just and holy Elohim, who I know I'm going to stand before. And I want to stand before him with a clear conscience, saying openly that I have taught everything the way that he's revealed it to me, that I have tried to the best of my ability to understand through his word alone what his command to us as a people are. And that's where, hopefully, when I pass from this life, whoever takes over Awakened Torah Ministries, whoever, well, maybe it happens before I pass from this life, but whoever comes in charge of Awakened to Torah Ministries, I hope that they continue down that same path as well. So shalom, shalom. Thanks for listening to another Awakened to Torah teaching. We love you, and we'll see you next time. Have a blessed week, and have a blessed Pesach.
Shalom, covenant keeper, children of Israel. You're listening to Awakened to Torah Ministries, where spirit and truth converge. We are a listener-supported ministry and ask that you prayerfully consider supporting this work. This ministry is focused on revealing the message of Torah taught by our Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. Your donation will be used to further a ministry devoted to exposing the lies that we have inherited from our forefathers, as Jeremiah 16:19 clearly declares. You can contact us at 777-690 South 4680 Road, Stillwell, Oklahoma 74960, or join our mailing list at awakenedtorah@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting when we once again are sheltered by a cloud by day and a fire by night, out our way to Jerusalem. Shalom Aleichem, and we'll see you there.